Good evening, Britannia, and hello to the rest of the world. Welcome to 2CTV, your global news channel. BBC have once again been exposed for being pro-Islamist. Surprise, surprise. Ladies and gentlemen, their latest documentary in Gaza has now been removed from their platform for being exposed for being a propaganda piece, a mouthpiece for the Islamists. Now, in this live stream, we're actually going to be going through the connections between the BBC and Hamas in Gaza. Because it's not just about what's already been exposed, which is over the last day or two, everybody's been talking about this so-called documentary from Gaza, which again had a son of one of the Hamas leaders being the main character in the whole thing as a Palestinian civilian. But we're not just going to talk about that kid, and we're not going to just talk about the story. We're going to talk about another person involved in this documentary and his role. And of course, big shout out to Jonathan, who has actually managed to do a great work in terms of finding out and digging deep into this scandal. If you're watching this live, we're going to get your reaction as usual. If you're not watching this live, then leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think so far about this absolutely disgusting scandal. It's not really surprising, but it's still relatively shocking for the BBC anyway. So this is about a certain kid. Now, a second child star of this BBC documentary nonsense has now been exposed to have also links to Hamas. Now, here in this photo you can see he's wearing Hamas clothing with a gun. But Jonathan went through the whole thing to actually tell us what the problem inside the actual documentary was. If you managed to watch it, I don't know why you would watch it, but if you have seen it. First things first. Zakaria is said by the BBC to be that child, his name. He's supposed to be a volunteer, right? They're saying he helps paramedics in Gaza, a civilian, very hardworking, right? And they did show some footage of him going around in the documentary, following him around, help out, ambulances and everything else. Now, you can see in this screenshot inside the documentary, he has short hair, right? But this is where it gets really weird, because the sequence in this whole film, this is where it's the problem we have with the BBC and this propaganda documentary is not just who they used. A lot of people think the problem with this was that, oh, they used kids who had links to Hamas. No, that's not the only issue. The issue is everything was orchestrated. Everything was pre-planned, and they made it seem natural. They made it seem organic, like a reality show, right? They made it seem like, yeah, we're just following this kid around. Look at him. He was there. Now he's there. He's just doing his own thing. Definitely not planned. But it is. And this is what we're going to expose. So here, short hair. Helping out ambulances, just running around. But then, in this screenshot, it gets really weird at this point. Zakaria asks paramedics to take him up with them to a bomb site. They refuse, and they give him a bottle of water to refill. And they said, I went to a bombing site before and I want to go again, right? He really wants to go to a bombing site. Then, this is again him. You can see his short hair somehow disappeared. He suddenly, instantly grew hair immediately, right? Now, it's supposed to be the same sequence. The kid was running, goes to the ambulance, short hair, and then leaves the ambulance, suddenly has long hair. Because obviously it's not the same time. That's the bottle of water. His hair just keeps changing, right? Goes short, goes long. Obviously that means that the whole thing, the BBC production simply had a conversation with everybody, including the Hamas, saying, okay, can you film this? Can you do this? And then we'll film this. And then can you do it again next week, tomorrow? It's disgusting. They did an actual collaboration. It's not an actual organic documentary. So here, Zakaria turns up, turns to the camera and declares that there are lots of people who are injured. But he's stopped on the way for a fresh, short haircut again. What's more, Jonathan says, again, his shirt is suddenly clean again. It was messy earlier, greasy, and then the flip-flops are gone. Now he's wearing trainers. So it's supposed to be the same day. It's supposed to be the same moment. They did really well with the editing. They made it like it's Pallywood and the BBC working together. Great production. So if you just watch it instantly, you think it's the same moment. It's just organic. Now you could criticize them saying, "Oh, why did you have kids with links to the Hamxs?" That's not my problem. This is a very, very great, well-produced propaganda piece that if you watch it carefully, you realize, well, flip-flops, trainers, short hair, long hair, clean shirt, dirty shirt. The hair's gone again. Is it all in the same section? So in a weird exchange, it's definitely staged. They asked the kid to see how many are dead. So he runs to look through the vent nearby and comes back to report. I don't know why they asked the kid, right? So they asked this kid, so how many are killed? And it's not his job, by the way. And then somehow he starts working in a hospital, right? Still with the short hair. He still has the short hair and the trainers are gone. Blue Crocs are back. So he's now wearing flip-floppy things again, suddenly. But, it happens. We've all been there, right? Now, next scene. It gets so weird now. The situation with this propaganda is that he's now outside again. Same day, same moment, just left the hospital, helping to bring in more casualty. You can see the cameras and the phones are out to film, right? But then his hair is long again and messy. And he's had time to swap the Crocs for black flip-flops. But it gets worse. Again, this is supposed to be the same moment. Look at this. Look. I don't know how they did this. This is very good. The bottle of water is still there. The bottle of water is the most consistent thing in the whole thing. His hair is not consistent. His shoes are not consistent. His shirt is not consistent. But the bottle of water is still consistent. Now he's outside the hospital again. He's wearing a fourth pair of shoes. Black sliders. Not the Crocs. Not the trainers. Not the flip-flops. He's got so many shoes. And then the short hair back is back. Well, actually, to be fair, the bottle of water is a bit bigger than the other one. So they forgot to actually give him the exact same bottle of water. Then, it gets so weird. Nighttime, ladies and gentlemen. Zakaria is now finished with being a paramedic. He's no longer working for the NHS in Gaza. He's now a journalist, helping other journalists and reporters, right? With Wi-Fi and their phones. He's wearing the same shirt, short hair, and now the blue Crocs are back. The black flip-flops are gone, right? It's gone. Everything's fine. Back to normal. Until it changes again. So now in this situation, Zakaria, has to go back to the hospital because obviously he's also a doctor. He has to work in the hospital. But actually this time he's cleaning the ambulance. But not before another change of clothes. Red shirt, short hair. Now you might say, okay, well, you can change his shirt. Fine. It's supposed to be the same night after the interview. Change his shirt. His hair changed again. How many times does he have a haircut and instantly grows his hair? It's absolutely impressive. We've been talking about Mr. Fafo, F around and find out. Remember Mr. Fafo? He's had many jobs in Gaza. He died 4 times. He had so many babies. But this kid, he is the real talent, guys. He is the real talent. So, let's go to this section. It's clear that the entire section of the film doesn't actually show the aftermath of one airstrike at all. Nor even the events which took place on the same day. It's not the same day. The whole thing is edited, right? You can see the hair again, short. They told him to wear the same shirt. Look at the hair. Look at this one. This is supposed to be the same. Well, obviously, it's not the same day. We know that already. But the BBC played a role in this. The BBC orchestrated this. You can't just blame Pallywood. This is collaboration between Pallywood and the BBC. And of course, his bestie with a terrorist who's too afraid to show his face. Or he really cares about public health and COVID. So he has to cover his face in case somebody coughs, right? They really care about public health. I don't understand why you guys don't appreciate the level of care in Gaza when it comes to the China virus. You have to give credit to them. But having said that, this kid, we don't know. Zakaria, a lot of people say maybe he was forced or groomed to do this, right? But we've already seen their schools, their education system, what they do. You'd think that this, obviously, it is still basically a child. and you are mistreating a child, if you are the BBC, you're the BBC, you're not Hollywood, you're the BBC, your job is to make sure that nobody's using children, brainwashing them, or firstly get the consent. Where are the parents, right? Find out who the parents are. Did the BBC play a role in grooming this kid as well? Because obviously Hamas already did that, because the BBC also orchestrated the whole thing. Did they get consent from the parents? Does he actually have parents? Was that guy who was very much into COVID, covering his face, was that the dad? Well, maybe the older brother. How long can they go and get away with this? Nicole Lampert said that the former BBC boss, Danny Cohen, has responded to this documentary thing, propaganda, saying, "This is a very serious crisis for the BBC. It means that our national broadcaster distributed terrorist propaganda to the homes of license fee payers. In an initial statement, the corporation confirmed that it had full editorial control of the program. Yet 24 hours later, it claimed the complete opposite, announcing that production team had full editorial control of filming with Abdullah, the other one. The BBC could actually go down for this. I don't think people have realized how serious this is compared to any other scandal that the BBC managed to get away with. I can assure you this could be the beginning of the fall. And it has to be. Because this is not just about BBC being biased. This is not just about the BBC being a propaganda mouthpiece. No. BBC may have actually broken the law in the United Kingdom. Almost treasonous. They have collaborated with a terrorist organization. This is not just about being biased. It's illegal. There's a legal problem here for the BBC. And if the opposition parties, the centre-right parties, the Tories, Reforms, and all the others, if they are serious about the BBC and the problem with the BBC, they must take this forward. Start a full investigation, full inquiry, not about bias. I don't really care about bias. That's to be used to it when it comes to the BBC. This could be a big problem when it comes to the legality of this, because if it's confirmed that they claim that they have full editorial control, they collaborated with Hamas, a terrorist organization, not for an organic documentary reality, fully edited, pre-planned, with Hollywood. That's not right. We'll see if anybody does anything in Parliament, obviously. Oh, what do you guys think? Vinny says, how much longer will rational people just stand by? Good question. Misha says, all the sympathy channels on YouTube that ask for donations to Gaza are probably actors in the UK. Yeah, I mean, anybody asking for money for Gaza always question where the money is going to go, because it's never straightforward. Marina says, thank you for your honest reporting, TC. I can always get the truth here. Thank you so much, Marina. Another one says, each institution in the UK is a stronghold for Islamists. I mean, they have definitely infiltrated many of our organizations, obviously from schools, universities, to even the BBC and the others as well. BBC equals broadcasting baby as credential. Well, credential could probably change to something better. Channel, maybe. Now, there's funding Hamas propaganda. We, the public, are paying. Yeah, also let's not forget, because as we reported recently, the full investigation revealed that the BBC is not just funded by the TV license fee payers. It's not like if you cancel your TV license, you're no longer funding the BBC. Oh, no. You're still funding the BBC, because money from general taxation and income tax still goes to the BBC. It's not just the license fee. Fred says, wow, no S2C. When did you find out the BBC is maybe pro-Islam? About 10 years ago, as we've been talking for the past few years. What next? The London Mayor is pro-Hamas? I think Fred is a little bit surprised. I think he's trying to do sarcasm, but not really well. Is it not some sort of expose about BBC being pro-Islam? Even Christopher Hitchens used to warn about that. And that was about 14, 15 years ago. And we've been talking about that for the past 6, 7 years. I've been talking about it for about 12 years. Before media, I was in politics. So, no, I'm guessing Fred is new to the channel, but it's fine. Now, Sandy says, since the UK is quickly becoming a Muslim country, I doubt anything will be done. The thing is, if anything could be done and should be done, it has to be now, because things are changing rapidly in terms of obviously the culture of the country, demographics, and the law of the land. So, as I always say, even in terms of the democratic systems, so the Houses of Parliament, all you need is a change of about 20% of parliamentarians in the House of Commons to be from a different culture, unifying culture, so Islamic culture, against the other religions and everything else. And they can obviously democratically have a bigger voice and change legislations and the constitution. And there's no way you can stop that because it's democracy. So demographic change that's happening now will result in a democratic change in the future. By that point, if you kick off, that means you are anti-democracy. So you have to make the changes now before we get to that point, because there's no need anymore for the enemies of the West to do any sort of physical revolution, any sort of bloody revolution. There's no need to do that because we're just inviting everybody in. And that's becoming a bigger crisis than what we have now. The UK is the worst country in Europe. Germany can still be saved. And Sweden is already saved by the current government. The thing is, Sweden, the Swedish policies are changing, but in terms of the society in general, there's still massive crisis in most parts of the Swedish urban areas. Same for Germany, but as long as they actually stop fighting back, the government on behalf of the people, then it will take time for that change to actually be visible. The UK, we don't really have any party on the mainstream centre-right that is against Islamism, and that's becoming a problem. Obviously, both the Tories and Reform UK, they don't want alienation of Islam, so they want to push for integration, which is one approach, which I don't agree with because it doesn't work. But that's how the centre-right is working in the UK. It's very different to Germany, Denmark, Sweden, and other countries. Now, Sylvan says, stay behind your keyboard, people. It's all you're all willing to do. As I always say, those who type a comment saying, you guys, you're not doing anything, they're the same people who are just typing and not doing anything. It's kind of ironic. It's a cycle of doom. Everyone's typing about the others. You're not doing anything about it while sitting at home. So that happens all the time. That's actually one of the problems when it comes to the uprising in Iran, because the Iranians are not revolutionary people. You got a small group of very passionate young people fighting out there on the streets, but everybody else inside and outside Iran, Iranians, are saying, "Come on, guys, rise up!" And like, you're not rising up, telling everybody else to rise up. Anyway, now Dolly says, isn't the BBC, well, they was funded by the USAID. Yes, they were as well. I mean, the BBC were receiving funding from the US, the European Union, and the United Nations, and also the Foreign Office in the UK, which is general taxation. Anyway. Victorette says, let's all watch how hard Starmer tries to prevent any investigation or changes to the BBC after this. America stands with the right side of the UK. So Keir Starmer uses certain ministers to do certain things. So in this situation, Lisa Nandy, as government minister, has come out to essentially condemn the BBC, saying you've been naughty. That's all, basically. She's calling it out. But on the other hand, they're playing good cop, bad cop, because the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner, they come out and say, we fully back the BBC. In fact, we want to not just extend the license fee, the TV license, which is 2027. The Tories were removing it, obviously, as you guys know. Boris Johnson started this to basically get the TV license to be expired in 2027. That's it. You have to find a new funding formula. Starmer reversed that, but he's going further. He's not just defending the BBC and protecting it in terms of the current format. He's actually making some changes. He's going to be adding more general taxation to the funding. So it won't just be the license fee payers. Right now, you still pay a bit of it from your taxes, a little bit of it, to the BBC, but more people will be paying more for the BBC, even if you're not watching it. I mean, apparently that's normal in 2025 Britain. Jojo says Starmer meets with Trump Tuesday. I wish that Trump could just punch him in the face. That would be a little bit OTT as a reaction, but yeah, let's see how that goes, that meeting. Because obviously they're going to have to discuss what's going on with Ukraine. Starmer has to somehow defend Zelensky. And also, he has to talk about, they have to clash over Gaza. Starmer has no say in this. I don't know why he's even getting involved with the Gaza plan. None of your business. Considering the British government's approach for the past few years has been isolation, where we're not getting involved, apart from Ukraine, we're not getting involved with anything, right? You know, do you want to help the Iranians? No, we're not helping the Iranians. Do you want to help the Christians in Nigeria? No. We don't want to help anybody, right? But Ukraine is different because obviously the fight against Putin, right? But he's going to come out and say, I'm going to get involved with Gaza. Since when? When did the British government suddenly become so passionate about publicly interfering? You know, we are already interfering by sending British tax money to Gaza and bringing in all the Gazans here. Keep bringing in people. That's the only level of involvement we've had. Suddenly, Starmer is now going to be lecturing Trump on how to deal with terrorists. Anyway, Sheila says, anything to do with hate not hope? No, not this in this situation. This goes beyond what those hipsters do. The Viking says, and the BBC still expects us to pay money to them. The thing is, they will take your money regardless. BBC equals Al Jazeera. BBC Jazeera, yeah. They're as bad as each other at this point. It was interesting because at least you could have said 10, 15 years ago, the BBC still had a level of professional, not necessarily credibility, it was still going down. But 10, 15 years ago, the BBC were professional. They were professional. They were very good. They had good top teams in terms of investigative journalism. They would not have been able to do this, what they did in Gaza, that documentary. They would have probably still done something biased, but they would have been more professional and more slick about it. Now, Jonathan and the others who managed to expose this by just simply watching the documentary, that was too easy to spot the mistakes and the errors. Everything changes. So back then, the BBC could have actually said, Al Jazeera, propaganda mouthpiece, which is true for the state of Qatar, and Al Jazeera is basically trying to pretend to be impartial, but they're not. Yes, the BBC had a point. I don't think the BBC can say anything about Al Jazeera or any other channel. Everybody else can criticize Al Jazeera, RT, and all the other channels around the world, right? It's all mainstream media. They're all as bad as each other. But the BBC should not say anything about... The thing is, we've had tribalism on the rise massively, up to a point where, for some reason, people who say we are skeptical when it comes to all mainstream establishments, globalist establishments, or media, but then because of tribalism, we tend to pick something because it's against somebody else. So both left and right do it all the time. So some people on the right who would say, we hate all the mainstream media. And then they would have said a few years ago, yes, but the BBC is bad. But they criticize Al Jazeera. No, I'm going to watch Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera is actually good. It's still mainstream media, you idiots. Same applies to governments. They say, well, no, we're against all governments. And then they say, yeah, but I'm going to support the Russian government because I hate Ukraine. Or I'm going to support Ukraine, the Ukrainian government, not the people, because I hate Russian people. Like, why are you supporting government? Support people, not the government. You are supposed to be against government. What is going on? Right. Civil Defense UK says Starmer is meeting JD Vance, not Trump. Trump has battered Starmer away. Oh yeah, he's only meeting Vance, and he will put him in a little box and F him off. Though to be fair, if he's meeting JD Vance, he's gonna probably think he can come across as more confident, Starmer. But I don't. He might, if he thinks that, he's gonna be underestimating JD Vance and his intelligence. Because if he thinks, this is not Trump, the boss man, and JD Vance is this young man, I'm Starmer, I'm so smart, and I'm wise, you will be done by JD Vance. Victor Red says, charge Starmer with treason. You need to have the grounds for it, obviously. Browser Head Teacher says the struggle between the people and the hatred amongst them is being nurtured by highly specific parties. Always helps them. And Vinny says Veach got the arrest of Hamas man yesterday. Thanks for that. That's Charlie. Yeah, in short, the civilized world has been infiltrated by uncivilized human viruses. Anyway, Barry says, Maya, do you think this will continue while Labour are in, as the three seem to be connected unofficially? Three what? Oh, there seem to be. Maybe, I don't know. The three? What three? No, because it doesn't matter what party you have in government in the UK. We've said this before. So the British establishment is very different. The structure of the country, the governance of the country is very different to especially America, but many other Western countries. This country has always been based on establishment. The power comes from the top, not the bottom. The power doesn't come from the people. They have the power at the top. You knock on the door of the powerful. You demand liberties and rights, and they give it to you. That's that, to make it simplified. But that means it doesn't matter what party is in power, because the rest of the system doesn't change. The BBC, the head of the NHS, civil servants, permanent secretaries, cabinet secretary, the paperwork, the blueprint of governance doesn't change. You go in as a new government minister, they will tell you, this is what we're doing. Work within the framework. It's not like the White House. When the new president comes, everybody gets kicked out of the White House and they bring in their own people. It doesn't work that way. Now, you can't just say, we need a new prime minister or party to, I don't know, kick people out. You can't do what Doge is doing in the UK. You can't just fire a permanent secretary because it's like Hydra. They're going to bring in it's not about the person. They've already written an invisible, unofficial constitution that the system, and that includes the likes of Foreign Office and all these guys, they're already running it, the Cabinet Office. So the only way you could do it is actually get someone to completely change the system. And that is soft revolution. I mean, ideally, you want to call it British evolution. And we've done it before. I mean, we've said we've had it after Oliver Cromwell, when Charles II came. And many times, obviously, even Henry VIII, technically, you could say that was a massive constitutional change. But it doesn't really matter if Labour is in power or not. The issue with the BBC propaganda will continue. The issue with the funding Islamists will continue. It doesn't matter if it's Tories or Reform or Labour. Those things won't change. Policies will change. The level of taxation will change. The level of spending on welfare will change. But not the deep part of governance. That doesn't really change in this country. Heather says, new jihadi city going up in Texas, US Epic City. That's a fun place to be. Explosive parties every night. Rooftop parties. That's so bad though. Tesbot says, do you think Starmer knows the dangers of Islam? No. Of course not. They don't get it. These people, they genuinely, it's not necessarily because they love it or they hate it. It's not even that. They live in a whole different world. And it's happened many times. Look at the final days of Rome. They didn't get it. Look at the final days. It wasn't actually final days. I was going to say final days of the Persian Empire. But the Persian Empire never had final days, because it just gradually just went down and became a bunch of losers. And obviously Greece, the Greek Empire came up and everything else. But the Persians basically they got drunk and they kept losing bits by bits because the people at the top didn't get it. They had their own interests and they had their own arrogance, thinking they are right. They made decisions based on the fact that everybody else is stupid. Rome didn't listen to certain type of philosophers who were saying this is not going well. When people at the top ignored it, obviously the fall came. It's happened many times. And you can make an argument even in the 20th century when civilized countries in the Middle East were taken over. They didn't get it, even if the majority shouted. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. I'm Maya Tusi, and we are the media.